The 22nd of November, Ukraine Media Center is continuing our operation. I am your anchor, Svetlana Cheprenko. We are talking about the map of valor and memory of the Ukrainian people. With us are representatives of the Ukraine Incognita NGOs. The technical director, and online with us is Andrii Kobylianskyi, the historian. That is the map of valor, something that we have not seen in the Ukrainian space. Maksym, can I turn to you? Where does the idea spring from? What is the public need of that? Didn't we have such an effort before? Welcome, everybody. In the territory of Ukraine, a number of battles and hostilities took place, and for the systemic heroization or celebration of that period was not memorized and popularized, but that was done over the Soviet period. But what about the previous periods of history, pre-Soviet, during the Cossack era, where the Ukrainian nation was being formed? Systemically, it was not put together or presented. During the different openings through the Ministry of Youth and Education, we presented this project, the map of valor and history of Ukraine. We wanted to set up a single platform for people to see what was going on. The project also foresaw not only the electronic version, but to celebrate the history. You have to go to specific places where the Cossacks were fighting and where the Muscovites were fleeing from, where they didn't flee. You see, it has to be localized in specific place. We wanted to set up plates for people to see. Why is it necessary? The younger generation must be brought up in some specific terms, not in some far-fetched Cossacks or the Ukrainian resurgence army. We want to set a place where the Ukrainian resurgence army were fighting the Soviets. This is where the Ukrainian people's republic fighters were fighting, where they were fighting the Germans. So we are talking about specific geographic places. We want to see the access not through the Wikipedia or the Google. We have one resource called the Map of Valor and Memory. We'll be talking about that later, and my colleagues are more well-versed in this. Roman, can I talk to you? How did you create such a map? How long time did it take? What are the places that you have identified? I would like to follow up what Maksym was saying. The thing is that the Map of Valor and Memory was a working title. We didn't know how to christen it. The idea behind this was heroization of the Ukrainian people in general. It's done everywhere, throughout Europe. In all the Unitarian countries are basing the patriotic education of younger generation on the examples of the heroes. All countries have the places of valor, and they're being celebrated and are respected. Different monuments and architectural complexes. Such countries as Bosnia, Moldova, and other countries that are not that rich have the places of celebration of history. If you ask a run-of-the-mill Ukrainian, what do you know about the Ukrainian history? Some Kievites will tell you a few things. Of course, When we talk about the Soviet history, it's not a place of valor of the Ukrainian people. It's rather a place of disaster, and we are talking about the battle at the Berestechko, for example, where Hetman Khmelnytsky was defeated, but the map wasn't there. No one knows and has not been mapped. Historians know much more than the ordinary people do. Historians know a lot of episodes that people are unaware of. When we decided that everyone should know about that, all the Ukrainian public, this is information needed for the younger generation. In Europe, for example, I'm not aware of the United States history, but I believe that Civil War and American Revolution are being studied very carefully. So starting last autumn, we began doing the project, and on the map, what we have decided is to show the places where historians will identify. We've taken on board historian Yevgen Chernetsky to participate in the project. He, the PhD in history, and the member of our NGO, Andrii Kobylianskyi, will go into detail about the process of how information was being gathered about the places of Valor. But right here, I would say that at this point in time, we are talking about the victories, battles where at least Ukrainians didn't lose. And we have more than 130 places on the map. On our database, we have more than 300. In the majority of cases, people don't seem to know about these places of valor of the Ukrainians, as well as the places of valor of the indigenous peoples living in this territory, for example, Crimean Tatars. So we wanted to localize the places on the map, and the second phase will be to identify specific locations where those battles took place. We will set up standardized models and exhibition stands with information about what had happened here, with a QR code that will take you to the website about a more specific information. The third phase, and I believe it will come into fruition, where there will be roads paved to those specific localities where memorials will be built. You see, we have had a couple of potential partners ready to celebrate some battles in some communities with powerful agricultural companies that are standing ready to pay for those memorials. You see, we can't do it on our own. Institute for the National Memory perhaps might have come up with some standardizations. We know what will happen as a rule. You will see a small chapel, what we see in the western part of the Ukraine with the Golden Cross and Virgin Mary. We don't want to see that. What we want to see is the development of the structure that goes deep into memory. This is the phase that we have not given enough thought within this grant that we have received, the grant from the Ministry for Youth and Sports. Basically, now the map has more than 130 places. We will add new information to that. The information we have had so far is very academic. Perhaps we will do some video materials, taking on board historians and well-known and renowned Ukrainians, very small videos, perhaps podcasts. We've been thinking about that. Some people say that podcasts take precedence, where people, while commuting to their work, listen to the information. This is something to think about in the future. We have basically achieved this phase of the grant. Andriy, the technical director, will go into detail. Sir, could you tell us how the map was being constructed And we have heard that there are exhibitions ready to be deployed. What we have seen is that we are working in two spaces. One thing is the website and the information available there. The map speaks for itself. The map is the map. We have set it up with some coordinates that were available, sometimes very approximate, sometimes very specific, where the battles of Valor took place. We've introduced a number of filters that will allow you to see specific event or battle or space or timeline, whether it's the ancient Rus or other more modern period, to identify a very specific time or place. Another part is what I call a physical setting up of exhibition stands with the information that will be set up at the particular 5 places where we will mark those places, including Bila Tserkva, Skibin in Kiev region, in the Volyn region, in the Novy Zagorin village, Kranets in Ternopil region, and the last one is Vyshgorod, near the capital city of Kiev. They cover different periods of time. It is to make it more interesting and exciting, to highlight different phases of the Ukrainian history. As for the structuring of the map, we have been revisiting the historical approach to such a map and its representation. I personally believe that history is associated with a history book or a school book. It's quite an arid reading. It's not that exciting. Some will read a paragraph or two, and we look at it differently. We've taken on board international expertise, including the history of the United States and the European experience. As for the Civil War in the United States, every single battle has been recorded in a great detail, because every person, every event is well known, is well described, is all the ways are broken down, the number of people engaged in the hostilities. We've gathered a lot of information on the 5 locations, and we have put them on such banners. We will print them and set them on metal structures. If we go from north to south, this is the logo. It's a Hetman order, very symbolic stuff, and we go from top to bottom, beginning with the preconditions of the battle, and it's divided into 2 parts, 2 parts to the conflict. In this case, this is the Bila Tserkva battle between the Ukrainians and the Poles, the leaders of the both sides, their coats of arms, the number of personnel, if we know those numbers. And then we see the map where the directions of the onslaught were directed to, and the way the Cossack would look like, what the Poles and the horsemen looked like, the Cossack camp, which is an important thing. So the same system goes for 5 locations, and we've taken bits and pieces from different areas of knowledge, because we are targeting not only grown-ups, we want to bring up a younger generation in a patriotic way. So there is a tour from school or otherwise. We want to see everybody see something exciting. If you're not interested in reading about this, you might be interested in the way those armaments looked like at that point in history. Altogether and comprehensively, it will result in a full understanding of those events. Thank you, Andriy. I would like to follow up with the information available. That's where I want to hear from Andrii Kobylianskyi. Welcome, sir. Will you tell us how the information was being prepared? How did you work on the texts for this project? And how this information was made more attractive for the younger generation? You see, the background might not be very helpful. I'm en route. But to answer your question, one thing, where did it start? It started with the books, with the available literature, very nice collection by Viktor Manzyuk, Ukrainian battles in early Middle Ages and early modern stage. These are short notices on the participating parties. If it fit the concept of ours in this period and specific territory of Ukraine, we looked into more detail what were the regiments, where they were moving, where the offensive took place or retreat took place. What else should I say? The different historic books. It all started with the sources of literature. Then processing that information. Mr. Chernetsky and myself, we came up with a concept that we should cover as many places in Ukraine as possible, not to restrict ourselves to Kiev, Rus period, Hetman period, or Poland, the Rich Pospolita at that point. There are a lot of things that were taking place concerning the Tatars or Carpathian regions are not represented in the current historic books of Ukraine, something that is considered to be second-handed. You see, as a professional historian, you don't know a lot of things, so you had to go into detail of a specific battle that turned out to be a breakthrough in the history of whole Europe. We have also aimed at showing the history of Ukraine as part of the world history. Again, when the Ukrainian history was written by the Russians, Ukraine was considered to be the Ukraine, part of the Russian Empire. Perhaps we were lucky in a way because they have privatized part of our history. So the time of Rus was more or less well researched. But the participation of the Ukrainian Cossacks in the 30-year war as part of the Christian coalition was not researched. The campaigns of Cossacks against Turks were in line with the Christian countries of Europe. And these battles and Cossacks impacted the historical process and development in the whole world. Thank you, sir, for sharing such information with us. Hopefully, this project, these texts that you have come up with will be exciting for younger generation. I also was thinking about the following. The map is perhaps open for further development. Are you ready for the fact that conscientious Ukrainians will tell you that you have failed to identify such a place, the place where we are living, our particular village? How are you going to select information? You see, we will only be grateful if people participate in celebrating process. Every community wants to be celebrated, wants to be well known. For example, if you look into the liberation campaigns of last century, a lot of battles, smaller or larger, took place in the territory of today's Vinnytsia Oblast and other regions. You wouldn't be able to identify a single place, a single community If people from those places help us, we'll be grateful. We will appreciate where people will tell us that this is the place where historical battle took place, and this is the place it looks now. We would like to take younger people to these places to see it for themselves. In Belgium, they have a yearly event relating to this First World War, one of the bigger battles. And for the patriotic education, they do the same thing. The first graders, people of 16 or 18 years old, they put on the uniforms of the period of First World War, and they cover the route of the first unit. And they're told, you have been killed at this place. Then people take it very closely to their hearts. They know how many people died there. The memorialization and the revisiting of events in Ukraine today are not systematic. Sometimes you will visit the Kruty battle place in the western part of Ukraine. You will know some places of the battles of the Ukrainian Resurgence Army. But the map that will cover all the territory of Ukraine for the school children to know that your relatives were fighting here. The Soviet history was quite fun in this area. What they did was they had 2 memorials in every village. The people coming from this village that were killed here and some other people in the city of Korsun. We see the celebration of 2 Soviet time operations was a failure, and there are 3 memorials celebrating that campaign. It is now in the museum of Lepokhin family, and there's one place, one small stone, saying that to the right of this stone, the biggest battle of Bogdan Khmelnytsky took place. If you ask a Ukrainian where the most successful campaign by Bogdan Khmelnytsky took place, no one will know. We want to rectify the situation, so participation of the public to make this map better with their photographs, with their video materials will be appreciated. The current war gives birth to new celebrations of new heroes, men and women in the Ukrainian uniform. How does it make sense to focus your attention on history rather than on today? One of the stands, one of the places that we will set up now will be a battle at the Skibin village. It's a historical battle now. It was a battle for the city of Brovary in March of 2022. Everyone seems to have seen those video coverage when a tank column was moving along the routes and our soldiers are firing at them. You see, it's like a game, tank game. You don't believe it was taking place. You see, these are our people firing and stopping the Russian column, a column that is turning 360 degrees, and they're being fired at. And there was a colonel a commander of that tank regiment. That's a historically acknowledged fact. It has become a history now. And of course, such an episode is celebrated, which is to say that not far from the capital city of Kyiv, there are a lot of places of Ukrainian valor that should be memorialized right now to show people where it had happened. Historically speaking, of course, we will revisit the history at some point in future. We don't want to be very hasty here, not to come up with the takeaways. Now, there were people that were captured and recaptured by the Ukrainians, by the Russians in the Dmitrievka village. we see 12 units of the Russian military weapons still sitting there. So what I'm saying is that we should be working on the process of heroization of the current period, but we have to be very thoughtful about that. And on that note, I would like to add that one of the places we have identified is the Battle of 1113. Everyone seems to know about the Andrii Kobylianskyi, who set Kiev on fire. 12th century, a new period in the history of Rus, a person who didn't want to rule the then Kiev Rus and took the capital city to Volodymyr. The Soviet or Russian histories are different. What they were saying was that this is where the history of Kiev Rus ended. My son, about 6 months ago, said that currently we are studying Andrii Kobylianskyi, and he is named by a different name, the Andriy Kobylianskyi. You know, it seems to be a funny story with new names and new battles. A battle of 1173, the Vyshgorod battle, the Wikipedia is something I turned to, and it turned out that in 1113, the Kiev and other principalities united and beat to pieces the enemy, including other allies from Hungarian Finnish tribes. Actually, it was the first victory in the Ukrainian territory that used to be called the Russian Rus. The Kievites should be aware of such events, that Kiev was a great city, historically speaking, and it was not Andrii Kobylianskyi who captured this city, including the beautiful city of Vyshgorod that people should go to and see the history of glory of Ukraine. That is to say, that was 1113, where Moscow was not in place. We were fighting the Russians and overwhelming them. Let me remind you that we've been talking about the map of valor and memories of the Ukrainian people. Media Center of Ukraine will resume our operation next week, and stay tuned. We appreciate your being here.